Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tommy Marks, and I am the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council and the Director of the Virginia Minority Business Development Agency's Business Center, located in Alexandria, Virginia. And on behalf of President Sharon R. Pender, I welcome you to this session of our webinar series. And today we have with us a great group of people that support us in all that we do and support this nation. We have our small business liaisons from 5 of our defense contractors. And this panel will be moderated by Ms. Diane Dempsey, if she would come on. Good afternoon, Diane.
Hi, Tommy.
Of BAE Systems. And I was told not to eulogize her, and I won't, because I'll be counseled afterwards. But she's going to introduce the panel that we have for you today. And today's session is not about procurement opportunities. It is about procurement readiness, what we need to be as companies when that call comes and that opportunity comes. So Diane, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tommy. And good afternoon, everyone in the audience. Delighted that you've been able to join us today. I'm being joined by some of my fellow board members from CRMSDC, and they represent some of the larger prime contractors that many of you are trying to connect with. So we felt it was important that we have this discussion, and I'm going to allow our panel to come on camera now and introduce themselves. That would be Martha Crawford. Martha?
Good afternoon, everyone. As Diane said, I'm Martha Crawford. I'm the SBLO for the Sikorsky line of business within Lockheed Martin's Rotary and Mission Systems. I have a long history, which I won't bore you with, but I've been in procurement for a long time. And so supplier diversity is an offshoot of supply chain. So welcome, and please let us know if you have any questions while we're going through.
Yes. Clairesse, can you come on camera and introduce yourself?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Diane. Hi, my name is Clairesse Jackson. I'm the Small Business Program Manager for Mission Technologies, which is a division of HII. Like Martha, I've been in the supplier diversity space for a very long time. And it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Certainly. Gwen Johnson, would you join us, please?
Hi, Diane. Yes, I'm Gwen Johnson. I'm the Supplier Diversity Director for Parsons. I'm engaged with a diverse supplier base throughout our corporation, commercial and federal programs.
Thank you. And Carla, would you join us? You're on mute, dear.
Thank you, Diane. My name is Carla Undurraga, and I manage the Supplier Diversity Program for Northrop Grumman, the defense systems sector, and collaborate a lot with the other sectors within Northrop as well. So can definitely assist with any needs that you might have and questions.
Thank you. And I represent BAE Systems. We're a large defense and aerospace contractor. And again, these are my colleagues. I've worked with many of these folks for a long time in other organizations as well as CRMSDC, and delighted that they're on the board of directors. Clairesse, can you come on camera, please? We're going to get started. One of the things that I think you hear frequently, a term, is procurement readiness. And in one of my engagements with the CRMSDC Minority Business Input Committee, the question came up. What does that look like? And I thought this is going to be a great panel because we're going to unpack some of the elements to help you get ready, to be prepared, no assumptions, know what it is that we're looking for, and what the United States government customer is also looking for. So I'm going to turn to my colleague, Martha, and I'm going to ask you to address the term responsiveness. What does that look like? What does it mean? And what should a minority business focus on in terms of responsiveness? You're on mute.
That's a great topic to start off on. And so responsiveness is, in my mind, covers a lot of territory. And so I would say, putting on my buyer's hat, for example, we want our suppliers to be at the ready, to be able to respond to our request for quote quickly, our request for information, and any inquiries we may have, any assistance we may need, but also responsiveness in the fact that you are at the ready to provide the information that we're going to need to vet you as a potential supplier. So be prepared to have your history, your past performance with other large customers within the federal marketplace, experience with any prime contractor, whether it's Lockheed Martin or someone else, experience in the industries that we represent, that you're responsive to our needs by being cybersecurity ready and aware and protected, and that you have technology that's unique to your company and can tell us about it almost without being prompted.
Right.
You know, so it's a matter of doing your homework and having all that information right there at your fingertips.
And,
Yes,
you
of
know,
course
that's a challenge, isn't it?
Right,
That can be a
right.
challenge. So
Exactly.
having said that, and you mentioned something in terms of be on the ready, I'm going to reach over to Carla and ask her to address, you know, the past performance. So Martha mentioned past performance. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so past performance, when we are releasing a requirement, we're often reaching out to multiple subcontractors because we have to compete most of our procurements. And so as far as past performance citations, if you already have drafted up some write-ups of what you've done on other programs, things to include would definitely be the program name, who the customer was, even if it was Northrop or BAE Systems or Lockheed. We recognize that some of you may not be doing work directly with the government. You're a subcontractor to other large primes. That's great. But, you know, some of the minimum information to include in that past performance citation would be maybe the value of the subcontract, who your customer is, a brief description of the work that you did, and the support that you provided. And this is for multiple programs because sometimes we might ask you for, you know, a few examples. Many times we include some of those in our proposal because not only do we have to demonstrate our own past performance, but we have to demonstrate the ability of our subcontractors to ensure that we're ready and can execute successfully.
So having a library
Mhm.
of your past performance citations would probably be a very good business practice, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, yes.
And I think this ties back to what Martha was saying in terms of be ready, be on the ready. It shouldn't take you a week to compile data, correct?
Exactly.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to get into something that's always a challenge, always comes up. And I'm going to lean on my long-term colleague, Gwen Johnson, to address clearances. Can you give the audience a little bit of background on why this is important, why our customers require it, so why we require it?
Great, thank you, Diane. So security clearances are challenging, and it's kind of, you know, you run into kind of the vicious cycle. You know, you need one, you don't have one, how do I get one kind of perspective? But they are important, particularly in the market spaces where those clients are trying to protect our national security directly with information flow, whether it's their systems or our systems. So these things are important. However, keep in mind that as you pursue programs that may require clearances and you don't have one, it's not a haphazard endeavor. Just because you want a clearance doesn't mean you get a clearance, right? And so really the key would be, is it important for you to be positioned with the ability to secure a clearance in the market space that you are pursuing your core capabilities in? If it's not, then don't pursue it, right? But if it is a market space that you feel is relevant to your core capabilities and the missions that you're trying to serve at a particular client, and that's the key. What is the client mission? If the client mission is in one of those wonderful 3-letter agencies, perhaps, or in the Department of Defense that has elements requiring security clearances, then yes, do try to pursue those. But you have to remember that it's a cost. It is a cost associated with having a clearance. There is a cost to pursue it. There's a cost to maintain it. And just because you want to get on a contract with a prime contractor doesn't automatically allow us to sponsor you for a clearance. So you do want to be kind of circumspect on how you get into the industry areas that make sense for your business and for the mission that you're trying to serve with your clients. You could pursue them through a mentor-protege relationship. I think that's probably one of the best ways. If you're in a mentor-protege relationship and you have the ability to look at developmental assistance that would include pursuing clearances that makes relevant sense to what you're serving into that particular government client, then yes, I would certainly put that on the bucket list, so to speak. But if it's not, then no, I wouldn't spend the money or endeavor to do so. So yes, it's important to be positioned, but make sure you're positioned for the market that you're serving.
I think that that's a question that comes up frequently, and I think you did an excellent job framing this out for anybody that had any questions and concerns. And I want to, now take this over to Clairesse, because if you do have a clearance, whether it be facility or your personnel have clearances at a high level, it should certainly be included in on your website and your capability statement. So Clairesse, let's talk about capability statements, their importance, and do you need more than one?
Thank you, Diane. And that's a very interesting question. And I'll just say, yes, you do. You do need more than one capability statement. Thank you for the setup. This is one of my favorite subjects because it's one of the tools in your toolkit that you'll use to get into an agency or into a large company. Oftentimes you're going to hand that capability statement over to, someone like us on the panel. And so we will take your capability statement to pass it on to a program team for review. But for them to take interest in your company, they have to know, first of all, what it is that you do. Your capability statement clearly outline your capabilities, your niche areas of expertise. Again, have you done your homework? Do you know what our needs are? Do you know what our areas of focus are? And again, you want to align those to the core things that you do. And I just want to mention, don't be generic in your capability statement. Don't list 20 next codes. What is the thing that you do best? And, and highlight your top level core competencies. And again, if I could, I would like to give an example of one, because we often say, give a list, but if I could, I'm not going to read the name of the company, but I'm just going to read just a piece of what's on their capability statement so you get a better understanding. Under the space domain awareness capability, X company is an integral part of the AFRL Dragon Army commercial SDA platform and key to quarterly sprint agile concept training exercises with real-time simulated data over live data. Their second capability, physics-based electro-optical M&S. X company teams performs regular real-world collections in material reflectivity measurements to create rigorous physical-based products that provide the government with sensors and architectural recommendations. And then their third area of capability. X company is a key industry partner at the Boulder TAP lab, providing expertise to optimize the DevSecOps platform for capability developers to rapidly build our exploitation tools for OPIR data. X company has a data science and software coders to provide on-call development of capabilities identified by our users. Now, they didn't list, they do agile software development, They
Right.
told us who they work for, you know, what their past performance is, what they do, what their niche area is. And I can tell you, when I received this, it took me all about 5 minutes to direct it to the right program team. They're interested in talking to them. We set up a meeting, and all this took place within probably about 5-10 minutes of me receiving this capability.
Right. They made it easy for you because they were so focused. They drilled down and all the core elements of information that you needed were provided. That's an outstanding example. Thank you very much. That isn't always the case, but this is a wonderful example, and I hope that the audience will at least pay attention to that and think in terms of how you can redefine or reimagine your capability statement. Would you address multiples so that the audience understands the need for that?
Yes, you want to target, as I mentioned, you want to do your research for your customer base. And so not all customers are going to require the same things. So after you do your research, let's say if you just take a look at maybe 10 companies or agencies you want to target and just put them in buckets. So you may have 3 capability statements that will address what each of those sectors may need. So that way you're targeting your capabilities, your past performance to meet the requirements of who you're targeting.
Excellent, excellent. So now I'm going to switch it up to Carla, and I'm going to ask Carla to share some ideas for, and Clairesse actually teed this up. She used the term toolkit. So what are some other things that, you know, a small business should have in their toolkit in terms of, you know, marketing collateral, past performance, et cetera? You want to take that one, Carla?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. What we call it at Northrop is like your proposal golden file, right? I mean, it's so important that you have some of the basics, like your financial information and DMB and stuff updated. I mean, most of us, if not all of us, use these various tools to do assessments, to assess risk and other things. And so we can only take what's in there. So having your SAM.gov record updated, making sure that you're clear on what your business size is. We get so many self-certifications from suppliers, and the business sizes on there are inconsistent with SAM.gov. So just making sure you get some of those basics out of the way, and you have your reps and certs and things like that, so that when you do get a requirement for an RFP, I mean, obviously you're going to have to focus on the technical piece and the pricing. Those things take a while. So just having like a proposal golden file, or like the library that Diane was talking about, you know, toolkits available where you've gotten, you know, all of that stuff that is very common out of the way and in a good place, so that you can hone in more on that specific technical requirements and pricing for that proposal.
So having said that, again, back to proposals, you know, we always have to do a management volume. You have the technical volume. I know that large companies have libraries where we can actually extrapolate certain verbiage, citations, et cetera. Shouldn't minority businesses and small businesses do the same thing?
Absolutely. I mean, most proposals are going to want to, you know, how you're going to bid on task orders, how you're going to staff, how you're going to recruit, you know, how you compensate employees, just different things that are common themes in proposals to assess, you know, whether you're going to be the successful offerer. So having those well-written, professional, you know, even something like a logo. I mean, we often request companies provide logos, or, you know, a description of your company that is relevant to the requirements, like Clairesse was saying. So having those things ready and available really takes the load off every time you get a proposal to respond to. Yeah.
And remember, those of you that are on this webinar, it isn't just for large businesses. This is what your customer, your ultimate customer, is going to request. So if you get to the point where you're priming, these are just shortcuts that are going to save you so much time. going back to what Martha shared with you, being on the ready, because as a small business, you need to be bidding frequently. The more you bid, the better you get at it, and the higher probability of winning, as long as you go after things, as Clairesse and Gwen shared, that are really in your wheelhouse. So you need to focus on those elements as far as procurement readiness is concerned. Now we're going to get into some more sticky stuff, as I like to call it. And I'm going to go back to Gwen and ask her to talk about, rate structures and how can you be prepared in terms of pricing and rate structures.
I think this kind of fits right in with what we were talking about with the toolkits. I know the government has it kind of down to a science. They have GSA schedules, rates are established for certain commodities or services. Why would it be any different for us in this subcontracting or contracting world when we know that if you provide labor and you know the type of labor categories that you're providing, you should have an established rate structure for those labor categories. It helps in a couple different ways. One, I would definitely say that it helps you to be responsive, which I think we talked about a little bit earlier. Responsive is so important. And we don't have, unfortunately, a lot of turnaround time in some of our proposal responses. So you want to be able to provide your pricing, your ability to serve certain labor categories as quickly as possible. And you want them to be reasonable. And I can't understate that. As you are preparing your rate structures and your financial proposals sections, you want to make sure that your pricing looks fair and reasonable. And it gives us as primes as well as the government the sense of credibility that you would have because you know your industry space. You've gone out and you researched the market area, what a labor category in your specialties would be making and how to put those rate structures together, and it makes you look credible. If your rates are so far off from those in the same competition for the same types of goods or services, then it's going to make your company look less credible. So I think it's important that you take a look at your infrastructure, that you have your financial systems in place, that you can provide fair and reasonable pricing on a quick response basis.
And that's true for primes like us, as well as if you're in consideration for priming.
Right.
I mean, the customer looks at these things, we look at them, and if you want to win business, you have to understand that you have to be competitive. Yes, being a small is great and wonderful, and we love you. Everybody on this panel is very passionate about helping small business. But you have to be in the know about rate structures and be on the ready, as Martha has shared with us. So this goes back to Carla's toolkit. Just really have to be ready. We've had task orders where we had 15 days to turn around a response. 15 days. Right. So having those things ready is very important. So there's another hot topic, so to speak. And I'm going to ask Clairesse to share some of her wisdom with regard to cyber hygiene. Why is this, a hot topic to the point where it's scorching small businesses, but why is it so necessary and important?
Thank you. This is, besides being competitive, you definitely need to have a good cyber hygiene. First, I would like to go over some reasons why you need to care, and then the impact if you don't. And then I'll get into some things that you can actually do to help prepare yourself. First of all, there's been a lot of cyber attacks going on. You hear about it every day in the news. And of course, one of the larger ones that we heard about was the Colonial Pipeline, when they shut down the oil pipeline. And they didn't attack Colonial, but they went after one of their vendors, and that's how they got into the network. And so that alone tells all of us, if whoever our clients are, we need to have our house in order so we don't affect our business as long as our customer businesses as well. And another hot area, thanks to COVID, a lot of employees are now working remotely. And so as they're working from home, how are you protecting your data? They are working at home interfacing into the company network from their home base. Are they using personal computers? Are they using, company, assets? And so again, mobile phones. So how are you protecting your company data as they're working remotely? Another area, of course, you hear about it every day, global tensions. We have nation states that would very much like to infiltrate what the US is doing, trying to get defense secrets all the time. And they will always go after the least link in the supply chain line to try to get into the network. So you just want to make sure that's not you. And then again, how do you maintain your customer trust? They're giving you, whether it's a solicitation, once you win the bid, you are getting access to government or your client's information. How are you protecting that information? So again, you don't want to be the worst link in the supply chain. And then as a result, if you don't have the right protocols in place, one, you can shut down your own business. Again, we hear about a lot of the school systems, they're locking their systems down, or whether it's a bank, or taking the Bitcoins, taking the money. And again, you don't want to be the result of causing your customer to shut down as well. And then you don't want to have bad publicity for your own company as different things hit the news media. So with that, and one other area, your social media. Let me not forget about that, because all of us are using social media to talk to each other. So again, is that a vehicle to get into your company system and to you to get your information? And they could duplicate you, take your identity to try to get into the network. So these are things you need to think about. So what can you do to be prepared? First of all, as a small business, you can just learn about cybersecurity. As Diane mentioned, it's a very hot topic. So DOD and NIST, as we all know, because they've been advertising this for a long time, they've got excellent information out on how to have a better cyber hygiene, specifically talking about CMMC. And I'll touch on that in a few minutes. The FTC has a wonderful series of information for small businesses as it relates to cybersecurity. Talk about cybersecurity during your employee staff meetings. Pick a topic and discuss it at each of your staff meetings. Create policies and training. And I have to say, even as large, and everybody on this panel will tell you, every year we have tons of cybersecurity training that is mandatory.
Yes.
And when I mean mandatory, if you're a day late in your training, here comes the notice that you haven't taken your training. Don't ask me why I know this. But we have, and I had to chuckle as I went through our list. I just wanted to get a refresher of all the cyber training. And okay, there's cyber training refresher, cyber training fundamentals, cyber training insider threat. You got phishing foundations. Every which way you can cut cybersecurity, we are trained on it. And then most importantly, you also have to worry about insider threat too. Do you have a disgruntled employee? Again, if you're on social media, it just takes one person. So just things to consider. And again, just stay in the know. Just, continually research and do your research here. And I'm just going to say a few things about CMMC, which is CMMC is intended to serve as a verification mechanism to ensure appropriate levels of cybersecurity practices and processes are in place to ensure basic cyber hygiene, as well as product controlled unclassified information that resides in the Department of Defense's industry partners networks. So they're taking this very seriously. They need to ensure that the data they give us is secure. And even as large business primes, all of us are now doing our evaluations through our supply chain with our suppliers, asking them, where are you as it regards to the CMMC and this 800 training? We have questionnaires that we give our suppliers to fill out. We have a team that assesses where they are and what their game plan is if they're not ready yet. And then in some cases, unfortunately, if you don't reach a certain level, we'll work with you, but you may not have the opportunity to directly work on a bid, or we may have to figure out different accommodations. So again, it's something to be taken very seriously.
Now, as harsh as that might sound, this has been out there. This requirement has been out there, and awareness, training. Carla, I remember when Northrop Grumman actually received some funding. I think it was a mentor protege program where you actually trained companies across the United States. DOD has done extensive training. It's there. It is not that hard. It's the fear. You have to remove the fear from this. It's here to stay, and it must be done. And again, if you're not complying at lower levels, you will not be included in our supply chain. We cannot afford the risk. Every time there's an infraction, we're required not just to report that our company has sustained a breach, we have to report who it came through. You don't want to be on that report. It's not good business for you. So thank you very much, Clairesse. That was a good assessment of what it is, what needs to be done, and the resources that are available. So please pursue this. We have another kind of interesting topic now. We're going to ask Martha to talk about financial health, which again, very important. Martha?
Thanks, Diane. And so financial health kind of goes along with as part of your being procurement ready, your firm's being procurement ready. So in our world, we meet a lot of small businesses. One of the first steps in vetting them with our supply chains is to take a look at your financial health, to run a DNB, to see how you're paying your bills, how you're being paid by your customers as well. It speaks to a company's stability, and it gives us a sense of how strong your company is. I was trying to think of an example, and I don't have one that comes to mind, but one of the things a couple things that I will also mention that tie into financial health. It is not inexpensive to be a government contractor, whether you're a prime or a second tier. Many of our organizations, the line of business that I represent, for example, manufactures aircraft. We have very stringent quality requirements that are bare minimum. And like a security clearance, those quality certifications are costly. And quite honestly, very small companies may not have the assets available or the resources available to pay for those certifications, or they may choose not to. That's a business decision. The other aspect of financial health, we spend a lot of resources, time, and money on ensuring that our suppliers are able to use the systems that we have in place. And so it's really important for us to know that we're entering into this relationship with a company that's stable and is going to be stable and be around. Because if we go through the process of onboarding a new supplier, which honestly can take 12 to 18 months, we want to make sure that you're going to be around for the long term. And so your financial health is some indication of your ability to remain stable, especially in the current climate. We understand that access to capital and access to raw material has been a challenge the last 2 years, but it's incumbent on us to make sure that we're working with a supply base that can handle the peaks and valleys, quite honestly, of this marketplace.
I think that's a really good point. Gwen, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, in the financial health arena, I think it's also important as you look at long-term relationships, because that's where we're really trying to go, right? We're not just looking for the kind of one-offs. We want long-term
Exactly.
partnerships with minority and businesses and small businesses. So as we do that, it's important that we look at, if we're going to sub under you, which would be the longer-term relationships, we want to make sure you can pay. So that the ability for us to pay you is important, of course, too. But as we look at financial health and how you manage your infrastructure is
Right.
critical to that long-term relationship. So I totally agree with what Martha said and how that's so important.
That came up today, as a matter of fact, Gwen, subbing to smalls, because I have always been an advocate of that, but there is always that perceived risk. So if you can present a healthy financial record, then that eliminates a lot of roadblocks. And I want to go back to some of the quality certifications that are required when you're in aerospace, because we do have aerospace firms on this panel, and those quality assurance requirements are pretty stringent. But there's a reason for that, because we're also in the shipbuilding business, et cetera. We're all involved in these things that affect man life.
Exactly.
So I know that when I fly, I want to feel like I'm going to land safely when I do arrive in my destination city. And we want to make sure that our young men and women that are in theater and putting their life on the line to, secure our freedom, we give them the best possible product, because we also, BAE builds a lot of armored vehicles. So our quality standards are high, but that's because we align to what they call military specifications. And, you need to be familiar with those. You need to understand what that means in terms of investment if you wish to pursue subcontracting opportunities with companies that actually have those primes. Or if you choose to prime, you need to understand the environment clearly. And now we want to shift up to, this is where all this stuff builds. You're building the foundation, you're procurement ready, you're responsive, you're on point. And now we get to execution, because execution ensures future business. So I'm going to ask Gwen to outline what execution should look like.
Right. So I like how you mentioned that everything here builds together. All this readiness activity, it doesn't have a vicious cycle. It actually has a purpose. So if we could use the old phrase that the Boy Scouts used to use, we need to be prepared to actually win. So you put in a lot of proposals, you do a lot of bids, you respond to RFIs. How do you now establish yourself to actually, you receive the work, now you have to execute it. And part of that is having a healthy infrastructure. And a lot of the things that we mentioned here today have to do with your infrastructure, and are you positioned to actually deliver the goods and services that you've been advertising and marketing. So execution is critical. So I would say, if I could highlight one thing that's really, really important, is don't oversell yourself or your infrastructure. Make sure that if you are going to bid on an opportunity that's labor intensive, then you need to have the right HR processes in place. You need to have the right infrastructure to accounts payable. You need to be able to pay your people. All of these things regarding how you maintain your business infrastructure is critical to actually executing the work. So you get the work. You haven't oversold yourself. You can't fill 50 slots in 2 weeks, for high-level security clearances, which could be completely, unheard of. But nonetheless, you've got the ability, you've got the right recruitments in process, recruiting process to find people to to kind of staff up and ramp up your staff. You've got the right network and relationships. You've built relationships with other small businesses or minority-owned businesses that you can partner and team with to deliver. And so all of these things are all a part about executing. It's having the infrastructure, having the relationships, the network to make sure that you can deliver on what you said you would actually provide. And I can't, understate that infrastructure importance enough to do that.
The ability to scale. And we say this frequently when we meet with small and minority, women-owned, hub-zone companies, service disabled. Can you scale? And when somebody doesn't understand what I'm saying, I know that they're not in the game. So you need to be in the game. You need to not only get in the game, but stay in the game. So execution is also important to ensure future business, because if you fall down on the job, you're not going to get a date for the next dance. And that's what it amounts to. Everybody wants to go to the prom, right? So I would like to say that execution is also delivering back to products, because we do have some panelists that actually deliver products. Schedule is important. Your final inspection is critical. Delay to us is delay to our customer. And nobody wants to have to report to the contracting officer, whoops, we missed a delivery date because our partners can't deliver. So there's a reason why we do what we do, and who we support is the most important thing for all of us, not just the panelists, not just the companies, but you as well, because it represents, aerospace and defense. So I think our panel did a terrific job. And now we're going to go to the second part of this, which is our chat. So we're going to open this up to some questions, and I'm going to review some of these and ask our panel to weigh in. This is always something that comes up. How do you obtain a clearance? Do you have to already be awarded the contract? This is the chicken and the egg. So Gwen, I'm going to ask you to respond to that.
So clearances are really based on, I hate to be kind of routine about it, but on the need to know. So I would say yes, you have to have some type of work in that cleared space to be able to secure clearance and then maintain it. So there's going to be an SF form that's going to flow down the requirement for security clearance. And if you don't have that, if there's not a need, right, then you're not going to get a clearance. So it's kind of like the chicken and the egg, as you mentioned, but you don't have to actually have a contract. But I can say you won't get the contract that requires a clearance unless you have the clearance. So having performed in that particular space is the important area. Now, having said that, if you're working in areas that don't require clearances, don't stress yourself about getting one. Right? Continue to manage and work in the space that you're in. But if you're pursuing that area, then you do want to try to work with the primes or et cetera, or the agencies that has a need for what you're selling that requires then a clearance.
And there are contracts at some of these agencies that are unclassified.
Right.
So you need to think in those terms. Again, you need to put some thought into this because it is a business decision. And we have another question related to this, so stay with me, Gwen. Do most of the projects require security clearances? What percentage approximate of projects require clearances? Well, that's a big number. I mean, yeah, that's too general. Are there any particular ones you would recommend to have before participating in this space? Again, I'm going to let you address this. I have my own thoughts on this.
Yeah, I don't think those are kind of too open-ended to be able to actually respond to. Depending on, Parsons has a significant intel and cyber workforce that and customer space and the market there that requires clearances, but not all of our work, as Diane mentioned, requires clearances. So it would depend on the market space. So what I probably have said this multiple times already, but encourage you to know your market and know the customer mission that you're pursuing, and that will
I think
determine
that's,
if you need
Yeah.
a clearance or not.
that's the most important part, because the work that's done at an NSA is different from the work that's done at NGA and is different from the work that's done at DIA. So you need to know what the mission is. BAE is also in this space, and not all of our work fits into Intel. This spills over to DHS work as well. However, clearances can be required at some of the civilian agencies, because some of the civilian agencies fall in the intelligence community, such as energy, treasury, et cetera. So I would suggest that you meet with your MBDA counselor to learn more before you even consider doing this as a pursuit, because, you know, you need to understand it's a huge investment. Like Martha said, it's a huge investment. So you need to really understand this. Now, Martha, I want you to weigh in on the ISO compliance part of this question. Are there any other compliance requirements or certain certifications we should have, such as certain ISO compliance or CMMI or any other kinds of general certifications that are now more commonly required? Can you just give a basic framework of some of the certifications that are required in your world, Martha?
So as I said earlier, being an airframe manufacturer, we do require AS certification for our parts manufacturers as well as our distributors. The other, we also have small businesses, primarily small businesses, that perform special processes for us, things that we can't do in-house, welding, heat treat, for example. And there are NADCAP certifications that are required to be able to perform those types of processes. Certainly we accept that if your ISO, and I apologize because I'm not up on my numerical, the numbering system for ISO. I don't know what we're up to these days, but clearly if you are ISO certified, you have the processes in place to be able to support a prime contractor. And as far as the CMMI, you know, and as relates to cybersecurity, those requirements will be coming down from DoD. And that is going to be, once it is implemented, I believe that is going to be, it could be a showstopper. The other thing that we require from our suppliers, and I'm sure across the board, all defense contractors do, is ITAR registration. And that program is administered by the State Department. You can get more information than you could probably ever use in a lifetime. And there's a cost associated with that as well. You know, I would have to say being in this marketplace is not for the faint of heart. And so I think in some ways, those costly certifications separate businesses, you know, so either you're going to make the business decision to invest and be in this marketplace, or you choose not to be. And so in some ways, they're not meant to be barriers, but they're really meant to kind of be almost gatekeepers in a sense.
So if you want to go on the BAE site, and my information has been posted, if you go into our platform and services link, we have all of our requirements listed in terms of ANSI, you know, certifications, et cetera. SEI levels are related to software maturation. CMMI is the same. ISO, all these are really nothing more than following the recipe. If you follow these disciplines, then you're doing the right thing. It's not just all over the place. That just puts it into a little compartmental box.
Yeah, and
so
again, do it make sense for your business? Do it make
Absolutely.
sense for your market
Right.
space?
Absolutely.
If you're a software development, then you should get a CMMI,
Right.
level. So
Right.
it just do it make sense for your market?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So I have a question. I own a marketing firm with that's also 8A and HubZone certified. How is it best to leverage that? You need to find out what companies are buying your services, because a lot of us have our own communications teams internally. That is not something that is contract direct. That is considered indirect. So, again, the ultimate customer might be interested in working with you for 8A and HubZone. Certainly, I would think 8A, you need to be reaching out to the OSTBU offices. But for BAE, that's not of interest to us. We have internal teams. I think the same is true of everybody on this panel for marketing. Another question that I think is interesting with LPTA, lowest price technically acceptable, it's often a race to the bottom. It's my understanding that this administration has moved away from LPTA, and unless you have a real, I think, grasp of how to control costs, you need to stay away from it as a small business, because you just don't have the margins to sustain that. There is very little profit in LPTAs. I agree with you on your question about it's difficult. So my advice is don't go there. Anybody want to weigh in on that? That's not for us, that's the customer. We don't do
Right.
that, okay?
No.
We don't have those kinds of contracts. Many small businesses perform well on SAPs less than 5,000 to demonstrate their professionalism and capability. What type of SAPs do you have for untested small businesses to demonstrate that you can depend on them as teaming partners? I'll kick it off and hope that the rest of the panel will weigh in. A lot of what we do is professional services. So what I've tried to do is, it's almost like a test drive. Give them 1 or 2 slots. Give them 1.5 slots. If they fail, they're done. If they're not, give them more. Now, I can't always sell that, but that is the approach that we've used at BAE for our professional services work. Anybody else want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I would agree, Diane, that is a good practice. We sometimes find that in our larger facilities, there may be opportunity for those indirect services. So, working with our facilities team on a small scale on a pilot program is a good way to get a foot in the door. If you're a machine shop, for example, and you can ally yourself with a company spares organization, or you're able to support a program and prototype, those are small lots. It's not a production run. Sometimes those are good opportunities as well.
And you have to look at it that way. I get a lot of inquiries where, hey, I just got a subcontract. How can I get more? Well, the way to get more is to perform well. That's the best way. Okay, next question. Can services be provided through our company in the US who may own or outsource to foreign subsidiaries to lower some costs by outsourcing some development work? Is this something that is typically allowed? Carla, and I'm actually going to ask Clairesse and Gwen to weigh in on that.
Clairesse, you can go ahead on that.
Okay. It depends on the opportunity that we're working. Oftentimes, we do have to screen some opportunities, or just you have to be a U.S. citizen. We have those security type of requirements. Because we're an international company, there are opportunities where we do engage and use international personnel, on our particular opportunities. Again, it's specific to the opportunity that we're working.
Right.
Yeah, I would say the same from the Parsons perspective. It's particular to the opportunity, but also keeping in mind that, it may not be development work that we're doing. It may be people that we need at a customer engagement. So that may work for software development that's happening not on site, but if it's on site work, then it's going to require people here. We do have international work, as Clairesse mentioned, that we do look for folks across different geographic locations, but for the most part, it's going to be case by case.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And you need to understand that we also have a list of countries that are not considered friendly. So it's a very focused type of thing, and there are a lot of hoops to go through. It's not easy, and it's not always about lowering costs. So it's about protecting the organization, just as we've talked about when we discussed CMMC. So the next question, and you're very welcome for the wonderful session. I agree with you. They've been terrific panelists. The question is on past performance. We're fairly new in federal contracting and do not have any past performance. But I do have personal experience working with government agencies for 10 years. How can I venture into federal contracting without having past performance? Carla, this is you, all you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be honest. At Northrop Grumman, past performance is really important. I'm not going to say that we don't work with new and emerging companies. A lot of work, especially with non-traditional defense contractors, happens like on OTAs and things like that. I think that a company that is new, it just really depends on your background. Maybe you've been in the service for many years, or you have a lot of relationships and you decided to start your own company, and you understand the tools that our customers use and some of the needs that they have. In cases like those, for sure, we will be more open to working with a company that can't demonstrate referenceable past performance. But I will say that in most cases, that is one of the factors that we are looking for, because we want to make sure that you can perform and that you can successfully execute the scope of work that we're providing to you.
I agree. And if you are a one-hit wonder, you have one person on your staff, what are you going to do if we give you more work? I mean, it goes back to, can you scale? And sometimes if you are what we call a subject matter expert, definitely interested. But if you just decided to start your business, what I try and encourage is partner with another small business and get some past performance. Mm-hmm. I mean, and there are plenty of smalls out there that need reach back capability. So working with your MBDA center, where they have plenty of clients that they're familiar with, this might be an opportunity for you. For the anonymous attendee that said, this presentation is more for startup or new business owners, I don't agree with that. I think that there are a lot of people that I've encountered that have been in business for 5 and 10 years and can truly benefit from, procurement readiness. But I do appreciate your comment. How would this change for a mature company? I would zero right back into what Clairesse Jackson mentioned in terms of the capability statement. If you know what these companies buy on this panel, and you send the correct targeted capability statement, and you can identify an upcoming opportunity for one of our customers, whether it be Navy, Army, Air Force, and say, I can fit right into this, and that demonstrates your maturity, and that you can give us all the information that would make it super easy to just send it right over. As Clairesse said, I want those 5-minute opportunities. So please reach out to any of us. I'm sorry you had to sit through this, but we'd love to talk to you if you can make it easy for us to make it easy for you. We're here for that, seriously. So question about telecom. Is anybody on the panel in telecom? Yeah, I'm not in telecom either. Sorry. None of us are really in telecom, so there really wouldn't be any opportunities here. Our next one is health kiosks. I run a small company that promotes health and wellness through sales of health kiosks that checks vital signs. Is there any interest in your companies now that a lot of us are moving away from large staffs being on campus? Are you aware of any interest in wellness that this company could help you with?
Yeah, in Northrop, we did have a large presence in the Fed Civ and health IT market, and would have had some interest here, but we right now really truly are an aerospace and defense company. We really weren't being competitive in that market anymore, and we sold it to Peraton. So, you know, there are companies out there, other large prime contractors that do work in the health space. So reaching out to their small business offices and making sure that they understand what you provide would be my recommendation.
So if you can connect with, and our information was posted, BAE Systems, I will send that to our corporate vice president of HR, because health and wellness rolls up under HR, and let them make the decision. Is this something that they want to put at their sites? You know, this is not something that I delve into. We are not in health at all. But I think that would be, it's worth an email. Put together a nice email with the capability statement that Clairesse already talked to you about, and give us some examples of where you've had success with these kiosks, and let us see what we can do to help you. Yeah. No guarantees, but it's always worth a try. I mean, it never hurts to send an email, a well-crafted, spell-checked email, I might add. Yeah. Don't laugh, it happens. It's yeah. So I don't want to have to reject your email and ask you to spell check it. I'd like to just send it on. What are the real opportunities for women-owned small businesses focused on workforce development and talent development? That's not something that I get into, but I think we could all say that if you send us an email, a well-crafted email, we can send that on to HR, who manages talent development, workforce
organizational effectiveness, things like that, leadership, empowerment and training.
Right. And to our diversity, equity, and inclusion teams. We can do that for you. A well-crafted email. I know I'm running out of time, so let me wrap this up.
Diane, can I make one point?
Absolutely.
Small businesses can also monitor the RFIs that come out of SAM, because oftentimes the government, and this is in all areas, they're looking to see who's out there that can provide these services. So one, by responding to an RFI, they know who you are and what capabilities that you have. And then two, you get to see what they're looking for.
Right.
And then they can target the solicitation to say if they get 2 or 3 or 4 small businesses that can do it, possibility they will make that a small business set aside.
Let me just pile on to that. That was a great suggestion. That's sam.gov. I'd also like to suggest that, you know, when you're thinking in these terms, respond to sources sought. If 2 or more companies respond to sources sought and they're found to be qualified, just so you'll know, they'll set it aside for small business, and then you don't have to compete with a large business. Wink, wink. Okay, so how do you see the acquisition of telecom services such as internet, voice over IP, point-to-point circuits from small minority vendors versus the large groups such as AT&T and Verizon? Unfortunately, I'm not in telecom. I don't want to give you my opinion. I don't think anybody else is on telecom either. I think that from a, service standpoint, what's the area you can service and what do your rates look like? You ought to look at that. But I don't feel like I can adequately respond to that. I am a freight broker. Will the drivers that may be pulling my contract work need a clearance in order to pull the loads?
I think I can take that one. In my experience, no, they don't. Typically, they go through background checks and things like that, just like most of our companies that are providing those types of services. But I think it goes back to what Gwen and others have said, is it really depends on what the contract requirements are. But in most cases, I don't believe that the clearance requirements apply to freight drivers.
Right.
And
And it depends
transportation.
on the actual product, because there are some products that require specialized
Mhm.
freight forwarders, those that have, tremendous capacity, that have been in this space for a long time. And the background checks are not just for drug and alcohol.
Yeah.
They're doing a deeper dive. So,
Yeah.
okay.
That's a great point, because sometimes, they're carrying explosives, munitions, different arms, right? So it just really depends on what it
Right.
is too.
Again, our data sheets were posted. MBDA has them, and you can reach out to them for information on how to reach all of us. And they have our email addresses, etc. We're going to wrap this up. Tommy, do you have any closing comments? I would really like to thank all of you. I thought you did an excellent job. Thank you. It was a pleasure always to work with you.
Diane, thanks very much. And thanks to all of you for the support you've given us today. A lot of great information. We will definitely send, I read all the questions in the chat, and we will send the information folks have asked for. Sounds like telecom's one for the future. And I wrote that down. So those people that have hung on, we will work to put a telecom, get some telecom folks on the screen. I'll close by this, saying this next week on the 15th, we got SBA 7J coming on, and we have a company called MRP or MPR, excuse me, one of the construction companies, national construction companies that has expanded to the East Coast. They'll be on. In January, we got the Department of Agriculture. In February, we will have a federal agency that we'll talk to. Plus, I'm going to put together a GSA workshop for those people that have hung on to listen. And so wish you happy holidays.
Yeah.
And put all those presents under the tree. Ladies, thanks very much for your support in this panel.
Yeah,
It's a
thank
pleasure.
you.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays,
Thanks, everyone.
everyone.
Take
Happy
care.
holidays.
Take care.